Are you
Hello,
actually recording?
Yeah,
Okay.
because it's the word of the week. Hi everyone, I'm Stephanie.
Hello, I'm Allison. I don't think this is how our intro goes.
This is Nerd of the Week, a randomly generated fandom podcast. Generator, would you like to tell everyone why I screamed at the beginning of the podcast?
The word of the week is panic.
Panic! Everything is panic.
Oh my goodness. Forgive our laughter. Before this, we commented, the horrors remain, yet we remain silly. So here we are. Let's get right to it. Let's talk about some panic.
All right. So, definition of panic. Go.
A state of being shocked and stressed. That's all I got. I don't know.
Sudden uncontrollable fear or anxiety, often causing wildly unthinking behavior.
Okay.
And also it's a verb. To feel or cause to feel. Oh, okay, I get it. To feel or cause to feel panic.
I'm gonna panic you.
I'm gonna panic you.
Oh yeah, that does work. That does work.
Yeah.
I don't mean to panic you.
Yeah.
Now, dear, I don't mean to panic you, but you might want to check out the fireplace. The fire's acting a bit suspicious nowadays. I think it's trying to escape the hearth. You might want to go check on that.
I don't want to panic you, but did you bring a towel?
What is that from?
Hitchhikers? I was just taking
Yeah, it is. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, how'd I let that go over my head? I was just making up a scenario, but you brought something real.
As I do in this audio medium, the picture that they gave on Google's definition of panic is the word panic.
I was going to say, I bet it's just the word.
But there's a lady who is looking off to her right with her mouth slightly agape. And it just is a mood and a whole life. And it cracks me up. I think it's from the how to pronounce the word videos. I think that's what this is. But like,
Okay.
the way she looks like she's also in the state of panic is cracking me up right now. Also,
She's just demonstrating the definition for us too.
Panic comes from the emotional state that was induced by the god Pan.
Whoa. Okay.
I just learned a thing. I opened like all the images and then I was like, why is there a man with a flute? Oh, wait, I think that's Pan.
Is that real or is that a made up fact?
It's on Merriam-Webster, so I'm going to go with very likely.
Okay. That's interesting. I didn't know. I didn't know that was an attribute of Pan.
Panic literally means of Pan, the pipe-playing, nymph-chasing Greek god of fertility, pastures, flocks, and shepherds.
I guess panic if the nymphs were panicked that he was chasing them.
His shout is said to have instilled fear in giants fighting the gods, and the Greeks believed him responsible for causing the Persians to flee in terror at the Battle of Marathon.
Wow. Huh. Okay.
I learned me a thing.
That's amazing. This is all much more interesting than what I was going to say about panic.
Okay, what are you going to say about panic?
Well, now it's not good.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm going to say it anyway, though.
I was going to say, don't mean it suspense.
So it's a meme. I'm going to try and say it correctly. It's not like a picture meme. It's just a word meme, so it's fine. Okay. So it's meant to be read first in a French accent. And you say, this morning I had a little bit too much caffeine. And as a result, I had a panic attack. And then the response is, it's only a panic attack if it's from the Hispanic region of France. Otherwise, it's just sparkling anxiety.
As someone with sparkling anxiety, I feel that.
Right. It's one of my favorite memes. I think about it sometimes.
Live in your head rent free.
Yep.
Excellent.
Perfect. Who doth go first today?
It's you.
It me. Okay. So I actually had time to watch the movie that I'm bringing today, which is a rarity nowadays.
Ooh.
And I was really disappointed because I thought they actually said the word panic in it, but they don't. They just have the emotion and action. So
I mean, that's fair.
Forgive. It's not really, but I'd like to discuss the dichotomy of the actors and their levels of panic. So that's what I'll be bringing to the table today. And we'll be discussing this through the medium of The Sorcerer's Apprentice, the live-action Disney movie. Are you familiar with this movie?
It sounds really familiar.
It was
Who's in it?
Nicolas Cage.
Yes. I've seen this.
It was made in 2010. It was like when Disney first decided they wanted to try doing like live action stuff for all of their old cartoons. So this is of course
oh my god. Okay. Yeah.
It's inspired by the Fantasia scene with Mickey and the brooms that like flood the entire magic cavern, and then the mad sorcerer has to come and like swoosh the water all away. You know.
I know the one.
Yeah. One of the biggest critiques that the movie got is that the music, The Sorcerer's Apprentice, because that's also a real piece by Paul Dukas.
Oh, okay.
Here I go bringing classical music into it again. But anyway, so obviously the original snippet with Mickey is the whole song played out in a little scene.
Okay.
This one, they like throw the scene in as like a one-off thing. It doesn't propel the plot forward in the slightest. You could watch the whole movie without the scene, and they don't even have the music through the whole scene. It's at the very beginning when he like first awakens the brooms, and then they go off and like have a whole different score that someone has written. I don't know who actually did the score for the movie. I'm so sorry. I'm not going to look it up either. But anyway.
Allison chose violence today.
So it's like the whole thing is called Sorcerer's Apprentice. You literally don't need to know the source material or understand anything about anything to watch it.
It is a Nick Cage movie, so I think that's just speaking from the fact that it's a Nick Cage movie.
Yeah, but it's also a Disney movie. They used to be good about Easter eggs, but whatever.
That's true.
That's not what we're talking about today. That's not the panic part. Oh, and actually, so the reason that I thought of this is when we were driving around a few weekends ago talking about Faraday cages. It reminded me of this movie. So, let me tell you a little bit about this movie.
All right. I love that that's how we got here.
Yeah. So, first off, it opens with a flashback, and Nicolas Cage is he was an apprentice to Merlin.
Okay.
And he's a sorcerer. He's also immortal because apparently that's how sorcerers work. So he is one of 3 apprentices of Merlin. And then there's this evil sorceress whose name I'm going to try and find real quick because it is a bit important. Morgana. The 3 apprentices are meant to kill Morgana because Morgana kills Merlin. However, one of them, Horvath, betrays them, is actually on Morgana's side, and Balthazar, who's Nicolas Cage, and Veronica, who's the sorcerer love interest of Nicolas Cage, try and defeat Horvath and Morgana at the same time. The only way that they can like stop them only temporarily is Veronica like absorbs Morgana's energy into herself, but then Morgana like starts taking over her body from the inside out, and basically like the only way to stop that is Balthazar puts them into a magic prison, kind of like a, what is it called? Phylactery?
A phylactery, yeah.
Yeah, phylactery. There we go.
Okay.
So it's kind of like a phylactery, I guess, but it's in the shape of a nesting doll.
Okay.
So they are contained within that for a second. Merlin lays dying, and he says to Balthazar, the only one who can actually permanently defeat them, because this is not a permanent solution. Eventually they're going to get out. But somebody's going to come along who's going to be the prime Merlinian. And
oh my god,
you'll know it's him because this little dragon figurine will recognize him, and he will be a source of tremendous power. So you must find him and then defeat Morgana, and then Merlin dies, which is sad. So then there's this montage of Nick Cage going from the Dark Ages all the way up to present day, trying to find the Prime Merlinian. So he just he encounters all these mystical people, and he hands the little dragon figurine to them, and nothing happens. So he is getting more and more despairing that nothing is ever going to come of his quest, and he'll be trapped immortal forever looking for somebody who's not existing. Apparently he also, there's other Morganians, the followers of Morgana, who he defeats along the way. One of them is a Salem witch girl. I don't know if she actually has a name in the movie. I don't care. I'm sorry. But he defeats her at some point. So she's another shell of the nesting doll. And then there's some Chinese wizard that he defeats who also goes into the nesting doll. And then finally he defeats Horvath, who was on the run for a while as well. So Horvath is the outer shell of this nesting doll. So it's this really powerful object. And if anybody were to let anybody out of it, obviously all heck would rain loose. So that's no good. But now here we are in present day. We meet a young 10-year-old Dave who's on a field trip to Manhattan. He also likes this girl in his class whose name is Becky. Becky is the love interest. So, while they're... What?
Just not what I was expecting with all these other names, and then suddenly Becky.
Becky and Dave.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
So anyway, they're on a field trip, and Dave writes a little note that says, "Do you want to be my girlfriend? Say yes or no," and passes the note down to Becky, and she marks something and tries to give it back to him, but then a mysterious gust of wind blows, and the paper goes flying, and bad little Dan, he does not stay with his group. He runs without any sort of help through Manhattan, bad choices all around. And this paper is just drawn further and further into the city. And then it goes into this almost abandoned looking building, through the letter drop. And what's stupid is the sign on the door says by appointment only. So usually those kind of stores, the door is locked. Yeah. But he just opens it and goes right on in. Come on, Disney, you can do better. You didn't need to put that sign on the door. You could have easily just taken that sign down. But whatever.
Allison's hot take.
That's my only beef with this movie.
The only one, not the naming convention that's going on in this movie.
Also, the store is called the Arcana Cabana.
Oh my god. You know, as a DM for Dungeons and Dragons, I should never feel bad about my ridiculous pun names, because Disney literally produced this movie and thought, you know what, people will like this.
We did like it.
It's true, we did like it.
So anyway, Dan is the only one in there. He's looking at stuff. There's all these ancient treasures that are magical looking. It's, crowded, as most antique stores are. And suddenly Nick Cage comes out looking like he does. So also, here's another beef with the movie. I guess it's not so much a beef, it's just an observation. So, in Good Omens, how they both kind of wear kind of vintagey looking clothes a little bit, and that's their style, but they kind of can still fit into every day. And then how Crowley has the Bentley car that he drives around. It's a good vintage car. So Nick Cage basically has that same style going on. And I don't know what it is about immortal mystical people. They do this in Harry Potter too, where it's the immortal magical people always have this kind of outdated 50s, 60s kind of style that they can still fit in with modern society, but they're not fully updated. And I don't know why they get stuck in that era of all eras to be stuck in.
I think it's because of the mob bosses and stuff. There's a trope and a whole rabbit hole that you can go down for that specific era, But anyway.
Okay, fair. Anyway, that's like the style Nick Cage is bringing to this play here. Movie.
What is a movie but just a bougie play?
It's a screenplay.
Yeah, exactly. A bougie play.
Yeah. Anyway, so Nick Cage comes up and he like is talking to Dave. He like points out this urn. He's like, if you fall into that urn, you'll get stuck in there for 10 years. And Dave is like, oh, don't like that. And then Nick Cage is like, here, I have something for you. And Dave is like, why me? I don't think I should be here. I need to go back. Like, now he realizes that he's done a bad thing fleeing from his class. But Nick Cage brings out the little dragon, gives it to Dave. Of course, Dave is the prime Merlinian. He doesn't know this yet. But the dragon, like, comes to life and, like, wraps around his finger in a fancy ring. So that is now his magic ring that he channels his energies through. You know how sorcery works. And Balthazar, of course, is like, oh my god, you are going to be a great sorcerer. I have something for you. Let me go get you your magic book here. So he says, I'll be right back. Don't touch anything. Goes and looks for this magic book that he's going to give Dave. Dave, of course, gets into mischief. He doesn't mean to, but like just having the ring, he like looks at something and like kind of like is holding the ring up to admire it. And he like accidentally like knocks a box off the shelf, basically, just with his power of like moving his hand. He's like, whoa, I didn't mean to do that. And then he like accidentally spins around too fast and he knocks over the nesting doll, breaking it, unfortunately. So Horvath gets out of the nesting doll and catches Balthazar all unawares, and they have this big wizard fight, no, sorcerer fight, sorry. And they're able to let Dave escape just barely, and they get sucked into the magic urn that will have a curse on them for 10 years. How convenient. So Dave is like, oh my gosh, well, he runs out into the street, and surprisingly his teacher and class have found him deep in Manhattan. I don't know how they found him.
Right.
And he's like, don't go in there. The shop is on fire. There's two weirdos and they're fighting. And the teacher like opens the door and looks in, and it looks just like an abandoned building again. And everyone's like, oh my gosh, Dave had an episode. And he like is mocked for having hallucinations, which is sad.
That's so not
so
kosher.
2010.
Yeah.
So apparently after that, he was made to like switch schools and he got help. And now he's 20 years old. We're 10 years in the future. He has regained some semblance of his life. And he's also... This another gripe with the movie. He's a physics major and he's really good at physics, but he's 20 years old. What would that put him? Like a sophomore in undergrad, I think. He has this hella fancy, large underground lab all for himself. It's not like mediated by his instructor or anything. It's just like, here's the space for you to do your experiments. And then he also is put in charge of teaching the Physics 101 class as someone who doesn't even have a degree himself. Like, they're treating him as though he's a graduate student, but he's only 20. And like, that's not how college works. Sorry.
He's just a super genius, obviously.
I guess so. But whatever. Anyway, after all this time, he recognizes Becky in the Physics 101 class. He's like, hey, you remember me? And she's like, oh yeah, you're Dave, who had that episode once. And he's like, yeah, that still is haunting me to this day. And he's one of those like awkward, like, oh, I'm kind of just a derpy guy kind of characters. You know the type. It was real popular in these early 2000s.
I think that specific guy got typecasted that way too. That actor.
He's the voice actor for Hiccup and How to Train Your Dragon, who's also kind of like I'm just a guy. Yeah, I can't do much, but then turns out to be this big hero.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, kind of like the nerdy underdog. Right. He's gonna do great things. Anyway, he kind of like asks Becky out on a date under the guise of, let me help you study. I can be your tutor. And she agrees because she has no agency in the film. Anyway, Balthazar and Horvath are finally breaking out of this big urn thing. This poor couple has this urn as decoration in their apartment, and it starts like vibrating, and then it explodes, and Horvath comes out. He's like, tell me, am I the first one out? And the woman faints, and he's like, that tells me yes. Great. And he like just jumps out the window with the urn, but he like flies away or something. I don't know. I watched the movie. I should know better, but whatever. I obviously didn't watch it that closely. Anyway, he somehow sets it up so that Nick Cage should die on impact, but he's able to not. He miraculously escapes. Then Nick Cage goes up to the top of some building in New York that has these iron eagles as its little gargoyles, basically. And he brings one to life so he can fly around on it, because that's cool. And then he finds Dave. I don't know. I don't remember how he finds Dave, but he does. And Dave is like, you're that guy from the store all that years ago. You know you ruined my life? And Balthazar is like, I didn't ruin your life, and you still have that ring. I know you do. And he's like, yeah, I do. And Balthazar's like, well, go find it. We're going to put it on, and I'm going to show you, like, you have this magic power. Dave is like, no. You already ruined my life once. I am in college. I have things to do.
Right.
And Balthazar's like,
have
okay.
priorities.
I have a life. I cannot play magic with you, old man. So anyway, Balthazar says, well, okay, I just need to get that nesting doll back, and then you are free to go. I won't bother you ever again. And being the nice guy he is, Dave says, okay, fine. We'll get the nesting doll back, but I have no idea where it is because I threw it in the street, which is true. Anyway, Balthazar has some magic spell that helps locate it, so I don't know why he couldn't just do it on his own. I don't know why he needed Dave's help to begin with, because Dave also doesn't know how to use magic. So they find the nesting doll in Chinatown, of course, because the next wizard in from Horvath is the Chinese sorcerer. So they go and find it. They go into this like old shop, and Balthazar's talking to the lady, and she's like, well, I might have it. I might have found something like that. And then he speaks in Chinese, which is, oh gosh, one of the dialects of Chinese is different than Mandarin, and I don't remember which one it is. And I'm very, very sorry for that.
Cantonese?
Yes. Yes, it is. Thank you.
Got you.
Yes. So anyway, he speaks in Cantonese, and the lady, like, she switches. She's like, oh, you speak Mandarin? And then Balthazar just, like, pushes her with magic missile, basically, and explodes her to the wall. He's like, it wasn't Mandarin, Horvath. And it turns out that that Horvath has, like, disguised himself as this poor old lady. I don't know whatever happened to the lady. I hope she's not dead. I don't know how shape-shifting works for these sorcerers, but anyway.
Fair.
So Horvath had tried to get to the doll first, but through shenanigans, the doll is thrown out the window again, and the Chinese sorcerer, is let free. And he has this cool power where he can, like, direct a dragon. Like, he has an insignia of a dragon on his belt, and just by, like, moving it around on his belt with his finger, he can, like, make this giant in real life dragon do things and be his minion. So there's all sorts of chaos in the middle of Chinatown because it's a festival day.
Of course it is. It's always a festival day.
Of course. And like there's a parade, and they have the little Chinese dragon dancers going down the line, and that's what actually turns into the dragon. And this is kind of where I thought Don't Panic was going to come in, because Nick Cage, he had told Dave, like, the one rule for casting a spell is you have to clear your mind and focus, and then you can direct your energy through your ring and cast the spell. So amidst all this chaos, like, these people have just turned into a real dragon. There's, like, all sorts of fireworks and confetti everywhere, and people are falling out of windows left and right. And Dave is just like, I can't do it. Balthazar, I'm not the magic man you think I am. And here's where I wanted him to say, like, no, don't panic. Clear your mind. He doesn't say the don't panic part, though. He just says, you forgot the first step. You have to clear your mind.
But he has sparkling anxiety.
Right. So anyway, he's able to clear his mind successfully amidst the chaos. I don't know how this boy who's literally never done meditation in his life is able to control this skill so quickly, but he does. And he shoots the Chinese wizard. I'm so sorry. I don't know what his name is. I'm so sorry. Shoots him off the balcony. Nick Cage is able to do away with him. I think he dies at this point, so good for him. And then the dragon transforms back into the real people. The New York City police show up, and Nick Cage magically disguises him and Dave as another team of police officers. And they're like, well, what do you think happened here? And he's like, I think just these people had too much sake and just got a little frightened about the dragons and the fireworks. And Dave is like, sake is actually Japanese. And all the police officers and Nick just like give him a look like, what? Afterwards, they're walking away, and Nick's like, I was trying to be in character. That's how they talk.
Oh, okay.
So anyway, they made it out with the doll. Horvath is still on the loose, but one wizard that they needed to do away with is gone. Great. Mm-hmm. Anyway, they really need to double down on Dave's spell casting modifiers here. Spell casting ability. He would be a fun Dungeons and Dragons character to be. Like, yeah, unsuspecting wizard. Anyway, and Horvath
that's also a wild magic sorcerer.
Oh, he definitely is. He's definitely wild magic because he can't control anything. Yeah. Then Horvath decides that he also needs an apprentice. So he finds this like street magic performer he's kind of like a David Copperfield kind of guy, I guess.
Okay.
Like inspired by that. He looks goth and he is rich and has expensive things in his apartment. But he also is an immortal sorcerer. Apparently his master, I think, because he was the apprentice of a different guy. Okay. He's like, I'm sorry, I'm not very good at this whole magic thing. I had to make do with what I had because my master died when I was just a boy. And Horvath is like, well, you're gonna learn now. So he takes this guy under his wing, but also like does not respect him at all.
Yep.
He's like, you're a sellout. You're trying to like peddle our ancient art for street magic. Mm-hmm. But he has to do with what he can.
Right.
They are trying to track down Dave, and then they've also determined that Dave probably has the nesting doll with him. So wherever he is where the nesting doll is going to be. They are able to figure out where his magic lab space is, which, let me tell you about that, actually, before we get too far in here. And actually, we're going to go back with Becky a little bit for a while. So there's a thunderstorm on, like, the first day that they're having a tutoring session, and Becky also works at the college radio station. That's what she likes. She likes music. She doesn't like physics. And so as they're going into the radio building, because Dave, of course, walked her there like with an umbrella, like, let me just escort you, good lady. Oh, my lady. And there's a lightning strike to their antenna, and Becky's like, oh no, we're gonna be off the air. So they both run in there, and all of the college radio kids are like, we don't know how to get the signal back. We're gonna have to call in the work crew, blah blah blah. And Dave is like, maybe I can help. And they're like, who are you? And he's like, I'm just a guy who likes physics. So he does something to the signal. He doesn't like go up on the roof or anything to fix the antenna, so I don't know what he does, but somehow he fixes their signal from inside the radio station, and they're back on air.
He's magic.
But he didn't use magic. He used physics.
What is magic but just physics?
That's what Balthazar says. That's exactly what he says. You just have to contain it. Also, apparently, sorcerers, the reason that they can use physics as magic is because instead of just using part of their brain, they can use their whole brain.
Oh, it was that time of movies where the trope was he's using 100% of his brain, where most people only use like 5%.
Yep. That's exactly what it was. This. Yep. Okay. So anyway, we then go back to his lab with him. He's listening to Becky's radio show. She plays the One Republic Secrets song, which, because of this movie, I used to adore. Oh my gosh, it's still a good song. Anyway, he's listening to that, and we see him like tinkering with his experiments. He does experiments with Tesla coils, and so he spends a lot of his time in the middle of the room, surrounded by Tesla coils in a Faraday cage. And he's realized that they can make a different sound depending on some frequency that he can tailor. So he's been able to now like make the Tesla coils play the Secrets song. He's like, oh, Becky's gonna be so impressed by this. So his goal is to get Becky to the lab to listen to the Tesla coil music.
The more you talk about this, the more I remember the fever dream that is this movie.
It's got some wild plot points. Throughout all this time as well, he's like learning more about magic with Balthazar. Balthazar like makes him clear out his whole lab space at one point so they can draw the magic circle in the floor. And he like has to swear that he's going to be the apprentice. Later that comes up when he's like, he takes Balthazar out to the park to eat sandwiches, and Balthazar's like, why this particular bench? And then they see Becky walk by into the radio station, and Balthazar's like, oh, you're in love? You can't be in love. That's just a distraction. And he's like,
oh,
Dave
God.
says, aren't you like supposed to be my mentor and like support me in my goals and dreams? And he's like, no, I'm not your mentor. I'm your master, and you can't be in love.
Oh, okay. Sure, Nick Cage, it's fine.
However, Nick Cage then remembers that he was in love once too. So he says, all right, well, you better be back at the lab at this time so that I can teach you stuff, boy. So he lets him go off and talk to Becky. More chaos ensues. We have the scene where he tries to clean up the lab in time for Becky to come by, but it ends poorly because he's a bad sorcerer, and like the brooms are trying to like drown him when Becky comes to the door, and he like doesn't let her into the lab. He just like awkwardly closes the door, and like the bottoms of his pants are wet and his hair is like dripping, and Becky's like, oh, was this a bad time? He's like, yeah, it's a bad time. You should go. And Becky's like, okay. Like, she's not mad or anything. She's just like, something came up. I'll see you later. But he interprets it as like, oh my God, she hates me. She's never going to see me again.
My anxiety anytime I talk to anyone.
Right? And then Nick Cage shows up and disperses the magic. And he's like, you have used the magical arts for your own devices. And magic is never meant to be used that way. Which,
okay.
like, why was there such a spell to enchant the broom then?
Right.
Riddle me this.
Riddle me this, Nick Cage.
There's some other shenanigans between like Nick and Dave. I keep saying Nick, Balthazar and Dave, and Horvath and his little guy. There's this one spell that they use a few times called the Hungarian mirror trick, where basically you can trap someone in an alternate mirror dimension, and the only way to get back is to like crash through a mirror. So they're on this high-speed car chase, and they like push them into a like building like windows that are reflective, and so they get trapped in this alternate Manhattan. And every time they like try to get back through different mirrors, Horvath like breaks the mirrors, so they can't make it through. Suddenly there's like this big TV screen in Times Square that somehow they've like jostled off of its pillar. So it's falling, and it's also reflective. And Dave is like, oh no, there's no way you're gonna make that. And like Nick just barely makes it through in his car before the mirror crashes to the ground, and they don't get stuck in the mirror dimension anymore. And they maintain the possession of the doll. I don't know how Horvath eventually gets it, but somehow he does. And he opens it up and he lets out the little witch girl. And she goes and kidnaps Becky. So now they can use Becky as, like, what's the word? Bargaining power. So that they can get what they want. Becky's up at the top of the building at one point, and she says, like, I'm scared of heights. And Dave says, it's okay. Just come look, which I think is dumb because she's, like, obviously panicking. Again, panic. That she's stuck at the top of the building. And he's like, no, look at this view. It's great. And, like, forces her to come up to the side of the building. when she obviously doesn't want to. So again, poor Becky, no agency in this movie. And also they just like write off her fear of heights. Like, it doesn't matter. She can get over that in 2 seconds.
She fits the sexy lamp trope. Understood.
Yep. Anyway, also they have taken, somehow Horvath got Dave's ring away from him. And Balthazar's like, well, you're the Prime Merlinian. If you have the power, you should actually be able to use your power without the ring. And Dave's like, no, I can't do that. I've been a wizard for like 2 weeks. Like, I can't do this. And Balthazar's like, okay, well, fine. I have to go stop Horvath myself because he's going to release Morgana, who's going to unleash the spell that raises the dead. I don't know why they always want to raise the dead. Like, find something better to do.
Necromancers, undead armies, the usual.
But, like, what are you going to do once the undead kills everybody else? What's the game plan then?
Look, there isn't one. We usually don't get that far. Usually some hero comes to stop you, so you don't have to think that far ahead.
Fair. They've also somehow found out that Horvath is going to use all these satellites on top of the New York City buildings to channel the power of the spell and like amplify it. And so they've already got that set up, and it's in the sign of a pentagram. And
always
Dave
a pentagram.
Also
Classic.
figures that out. And he's like, Becky, you have to go move one of those satellites out of place so that it disrupts the signal. And she, having just got over her fear of heights, thanks to Dave saying, look, it's okay.
Everything's fine. Your fear isn't valid.
Right? You're fine now. You did it once. You can obviously go climb up on this satellite tower and do it again. So anyway, she goes up there, disrupts the signal. Hooray. But Dave still doesn't have his ring and has to go back and defeat Morgana. He takes one of his Tesla coils out of his lab. It's a big thing. I don't know how he got it out of his lab. Ties it to the front of a car.
Yep.
And takes it with him to the park where they were doing the spell. He's able to like shoot it at them, and then they shoot back at him, and I think they break his Tesla coil, and he's like, no, that wasn't the plan. But then he like uses his magic without his ring. He does it because he's the chosen one, of course.
Right. Yep.
Through all of this, they're able to kill Morgana and Horvath. However, Balthazar has also been struck down. And Veronica, who was Balthazar's love interest, she's freed from Morgana finally, and she's well and alive.
Oh, good.
And she doesn't have any questions of like, whoa, what year is this or anything. She's just like, oh, I'm here. Cool. Let's get down to business.
Yes. I remember that being very like jarring. Like, you think she'd be like, what the heck happened?
Yeah. Like you'd assume she wants some sort of rundown of the situation.
Right.
But apparently she inherently understands. So she and Dave both run over to Balthazar, and it's nothing that like they're slapping his cheeks like, wake up. And he's of course dead. But then Dave says, no, that's not good enough. And he doesn't do CPR, but he like defibrillates him with his power. And every time he smacks him, he's like, you cannot die because you are old and I need you still. Whatever he says doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but he calls him old. And then Nick like wakes up and he's like, I had a dream that you were insulting me multiple times. And everything's okay. Becky shows up at the park after coming down from the tower, and they're like, we won, everything's fine. And she's like, that's so cool. And they kiss and everything is happy. And that's about it. I don't know what he's going to do with all his powers now, because Morgana's defeated, so he doesn't need to be a wizard anymore. He can just go back to his physics lessons.
Do physics with magic, question mark.
How is he going to write papers about that, though?
He just, like, makes up words. Like, have you read physics papers before? I mean, like, they're just nonsensical anyway.
Oh, my God. True. But, so anyway, there was some panic in there.
There was
but
some
also
panic.
some nonsense.
That movie I have not thought about in actual years, and
me neither until you told me. Well, you brought up Faraday cages.
And it was a fever dream, 1000%.
But it was of that time. I really loved this movie when it first came out. It was good. But I mean, who doesn't like magic, right? Well, a lot of people.
Yeah.
I feel like it kind of falls into the category of like millennial elder Harry Potter fans.
Yeah.
Where it's not Harry Potter, but it's like someone who you never expect has incredible magic powers. And maybe you could too, because look at this person. They have a normal life just like you.
Right.
Never give up on the magic powers. I can still come into my magic powers. I have life yet ahead of me.
My letter never came. God dang it.
Oh, did you ever watch that show, The Magicians? Mm-hmm. It was like Magic College.
Yeah.
That was a wild ride. I never finished the series, but it started out pretty cool, and they didn't get their powers till they were like graduate students, so it's still possible.
I think we've passed graduate student age, though.
Now we're cool. Now we have world perspectives, and we can actually do good with our magic.
Oh, okay. They were just waiting for us to have like good morals and make sure we weren't going to turn into like an evil necromancer.
Yeah,
I got
haven't you ever heard like that trope of like it's better to have your main protagonist as an old lady because she's going to have the wisdom of the ages and not make stupid decisions with her magic?
Fair enough. I concede the point.
That's why Howl's Moving Castle is good, because Sophie's an old soul.
That's true.
Have we talked about that?
Have we talked about Howl's? I don't think we've talked about Howl's Moving Castle on this yet.
Oh my gosh. I'm so surprised at us.
Right?
One day we will. But anyway. So that's all I have to say about this.
All right. I have a quote for you.
Thank you.
All right. Two people talking to each other. Sheriff, this is no time to panic. This is the perfect time to panic. I'm lost. Andy's gone. They're gonna move from their house in 2 days, and it's all your fault.
Interesting. Okay.
So while you ruminate on that,
I will.
I am gonna tell you about the hilarious and ridiculous movie Airplane.
Ah! All right. I'm ready.
Right.
Let's strap in.
Let's go. So Airplane, with an exclamation point, is very important.
Yes.
Is a 1980s disaster comedy film, directed by Jim Abrams, and has Robert Hayes as the main character, Ted Stryker. It's also got Leslie Nielsen, and who's, to me, I know him for his comedy roles, but I guess, I don't know if this is true, but I think this is true, which makes it close enough on a podcast. But,
on our podcast, at least.
On our podcast, at least. But so there were three leads. It was Leslie Nielsen, Robert Stack, and Lloyd Bridges. And they weren't known to have done comedy before. So this was like their first step into a comedy role. They were more known for being like tough guy, westerns, that kind of stuff. And so this was like their first step into a comedy movie, and it is a ridiculous movie. Now, some of the jokes don't hold up very well because it was made in the 80s, but I love this movie unironically and ironically. It has stupid jokes throughout it. But like it's got the classic like
stupid jokes.
Iconic stupid jokes, like the classic.
Like people who haven't even I'm sorry, people who haven't seen the movie know the jokes.
Mm-hmm, right. Like the Shirley, you can't be serious. I am serious, and don't call me Shirley. Those kind of jokes.
Yeah.
But so main character is Ted Stryker, played by Robert Hayes, and he's an ex-fighter pilot in some war that happened. I don't remember. Probably Vietnam, based on the timeline, but could be any of them. Basically, traumatized war veteran turned taxi driver. and because of something that happened, has a fear of flying now. It makes sense if he's traumatized.
Yeah.
And therefore has a, air quotes, drinking problem. But the drinking problem isn't that he's an alcoholic. It's that he can't put water or like anything in his mouth. Like every time he drinks, it goes around his mouth. And that's one of the like running gags through the movie.
Oh, no.
And because of just his bad attitude and his his drinking problem and everything else, he's been unable to keep down a job. And his girlfriend is Elaine something or other. I don't remember her last name, but Elaine is a flight attendant, and she broke up with him because she's a flight attendant, and she's like, if you're afraid of flying, how can we be together, kind of thing, even though like that's her job and she could literally just come home and not make him fly, but that's one way or another. And so she breaks up with him kind of right at the beginning of the movie before she goes to work from a flight to LA to Chicago. And Ted had I think he had taken a taxi there to like stop her. It was like that classic like run to the airport, find them, be like, no, don't leave me, I love you, kind of thing. And then he just on a whim buys the plane ticket so that he can be on that flight with her and go to Chicago and try to win her back. And so he is on board, so he gets on board on the plane, and then Elaine keeps like ignoring him through the movie, and he keeps trying to like get her to pay attention to him, but she keeps rejecting him. And there's him just going on and on to like the people sitting next to him about his wartime escapades. And like, I think people just kind of like off themselves because they're so sad about like everything he's bringing up. And every time we see him, there's another person next to him, like listening and just kind of being like, that's terrible, buddy. Then the in-flight meal is served, and the entire flight crew and a bunch of passengers get sick. And Dr. Rumack, I think his name is, played by Leslie Nielsen, is the one that discovers that if you ate the fish, you have food poisoning. And one of the lines is like, no need to panic, everyone's just got food poisoning. Unrelated. Anyone know how to fly a plane? Because the pilots both ate the poisoned food and have now, I guess, fallen unconscious. That's how this works with food poisoning, the usual. And Elaine tries to contact the Chicago Control Tower to ask for help and activate the plane's autopilot, which is a large dummy pilot. It's like an inflatable doll that like pops up, and then they named him Otto, and he can fly, but he's unable to land the plane. So Elaine and Dr. Rumack are going around trying to find someone who's a pilot. And Elaine's like, well, Ted used to be a pilot. And Ted's already like terrified out of his skull because he's up here and he's traumatized. And they slowly try to convince him to try to land the plane. But let's see. Oh, gosh, it's been a minute since I've watched this movie. I'm trying to remember what else happened.
Okay. It's okay. I got
Mostly
you.
I remember the silly jokes in this movie.
If you just want to tell me the silly jokes, I'll still laugh.
Oh, one of the jokes is when Ted is realizing what's happened. He's like, when my friend hears about this, shit's gonna hit the fan. And then you go to Chicago and air traffic control, there's like some brown substance that hits the fan. There's a lot of slapstick silly comedy in this movie. Steve, who's Steve? Oh, Steve is the plane's autopilot guy. Sorry, I have the Wikipedia up now because I'm trying to remember things. Steve. So Ted ends up taking control of the plane, and reaching out to his old commanding officer, which is his name, I think, is Rex Kramer, and who is now serving as a commercial pilot, and he's going to talk Ted through landing. And I used the quote couple episodes back of him just being like talking to himself in his voice or in his head, and then being like echo, 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 as his like brain is just like completely on autopilot and is unable to think thoughts because he's so terrified about landing this plane. And he starts getting orders from Kramer about how to land the plane, and Elaine and Dr. Rumek try to bolster his confidence by like giving him silly, more or less like silly jokes and silly things to focus on, and not the fact that he's got to land this plane. And the weather starts to get worse, and everything's just nightmarish. Everyone in the back is either passed out from food poisoning or screaming, and it's just shenanigans everywhere. There's also people in the movie who, when we cut over to like the airport, I think it's in Chicago, like we have like scenes of Chicago airport like getting ready for this emergency landing, and then you know the voice like in terminals that is like, the red line is for loading and unloading only, the white line you can park at, and there's like two voices, and it's a man and a woman, and every time we'll hear that, and then occasionally it switches where the voice will be like, the white line is for loading and unloading only, and then later on it goes, hey, no, I thought it was the red line. No, I said it was the white line. Well, it's always been the red line. Why aren't we doing it anymore? And then so like it's not an actual recording. It's just two people talking, and then they get into this like bickering argument.
Oh no. What if someone at the airport had to say those announcements every single time?
Right?
What
like,
if it wasn't pre-recorded?
That would be honestly slightly terrifying. And also like, I feel like that'd be the only thing that person could say in their life. Because if you just said that, because it's like every like 5 minutes when those terminal announcements show up, or like the ones about like, don't leave your bag unattended. And then yeah, I mean, mostly it's a disaster airplane movie. Everyone panics, and then they land in the nick of time through the horrible storm / all the things. And I think the landing gear shears off at one point, and they like go sliding, and they almost land into a building. And the rescue shows up to like help everybody off, and then Ted, because he displayed courage, Elaine's like, hey, you got over your drinking problem, because he like takes a shot of whiskey and it actually like goes in his mouth, and then she kisses him, and they're like, we're gonna rekindle our relationship because you're no longer afraid of flying anymore, because that's the basis of this relationship.
That's all she wanted from him, is free flights.
And then right at the end of the movie, Otto, so the inflatable robot, he like pops up, and then he like winks at them almost, and then a second co-pilot shows up, and it's a female inflatable doll. Oh. And the plane just goes and takes off with no one controlling it but the like inflatable dolls.
Oh no.
And then
That's what autopilot's for.
That's what autopilot's for.
They have autopilot in the 80s. Was that good?
I think it could keep you up. That was at least what they said is happening, is that the autopilot could keep you up, but it couldn't land the plane for you. I think it was okay. And I know like once planes are up there, they're usually okay unless there's like crazy turbulence.
I just know every now and again you have to like tilt the plane downwards a little, or else it's going to just keep going into space. Yeah. That's the only thing I know.
I admittedly don't know much about how to fly a plane.
One of my friends is actively training to be a pilot right now.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
And then there's an end credit scene where the taxi driver is who Ted had hired at the beginning because he had, ran out of the taxi to stop his girlfriend from going on this plane, is still waiting for him at the airport in LA. And he like looks at his watch and he's like, I'm going to give him 20 minutes and then I'll go. And then I'm going to assume he's not coming back. And so he left the meter running the whole time.
Oh
no. There's also other silly lines as when the shenanigans started to happen. I think it's one of Leslie Nielsen's role lines, but he's like, looked like I picked the wrong week to stop sniffing glue.
Oh no.
This movie, it's all silly, and it makes fun of several movies, but specifically a series called Airport, which was a Hollywood disaster movie that was like legit, like supposed to be taken seriously.
Oh, I thought it was just called Airplane without the exclamation point.
I think it was Airport. It may have been Airplane, but regardless.
Oh.
I know it was a disaster movie that Airplane exclamation point makes heavy fun of, but then if you go back and watch Airport, you're like, but this is the same movie. Like,
just without the jokes.
Just without the jokes, but like they still give like some like straight lines, just delivered straight without any like pomp or circumstance to them, but they're like, you are cracking up because if you've seen Airplane, it kind of makes Airport seem really, really funny. And
I see.
Oh, okay. This I see why they made such good fun of this movie, because some of the lines they say are just as bad as the ones in Airplane.
I'm gonna have to watch this original source material. I've never seen it. I've only seen the Airplane.
Yeah, I think it's Airport. If you know, listener, let me know. But I'm pretty sure it's Airport, or it's Airplane without the exclamation point. Or there's multiple of these, and I'm just talking out of my butt, which is not uncommon.
You did good.
Yeah.
He's good.
So, yeah, that's my quick and dirty panic disaster movie starring...
lots of panic, for sure.
Lots of panic. Food poisoning, everyone passes out. There's no pilot. We can't land the plane. Pretty solid panic. I would be an absolute mess because flying is not my whole thing. So
yeah, I would panic. I think that's the real panic. That's not just the sparkling anxiety.
Yeah, no, that's real panic. It did come from that one region in France. I'm looking at the cast list. Apparently Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is in this movie.
Who now?
He was a really, really tall basketball player. Who played like 20 seasons in the NBA, but like is like 8 feet tall or some shenanigans. And he was also in oh god, what's his name? Bruce Lee's one of Bruce Lee's last movies. He was like the final boss that Bruce Lee had to fight.
Fun.
So I'm gonna repeat the quote for you.
Oh, thanks.
Okay. Sheriff, this is no time to panic. This is the most perfect time to panic. I'm lost. Andy is gone. They're gonna move from their house in 2 days, and it's all your fault.
Okay, is this that one Western that's like a goofy Western where, hold on, I'm not describing this well at all. Hold on. I meant to look it up. Just give me a second here. Is it from Blazing Saddles?
It is not from Blazing Saddles.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to give you a clue, because the rest of this argument is them going back and forth, and then it culminates into, you are a toy.
Oh, it's from Toy Story.
Yeah.
Wait, is it Toy Story 2, though?
It's Toy Story 1. It's, they're outside of the pizza, I wanted to call it the Pizzaplex, but that's Five Nights at Freddy's.
I know what you're talking about, where they get the aliens.
Yeah, where they get the aliens and they're under the car, the delivery car, and they're fighting because they're trying to get back. Yeah.
All right. All right.
Yeah.
Well, that's a long throwback.
Yeah, 95.
Damn.
All right. So we are at the end of the podcast. So
We
Jen,
made it.
We made it with our wonderful retellings of silly movies. What's the next word for episode 60?
The next word is mountain.
Mountain.
Nice.
Noise. Climbing mountains.
Well,
Oh.
the first thing that comes to mind is Sound of Music, but I don't actually want to talk about that.
The hills are alive.
But maybe next week I will feel like talking about it. We'll see.
The first thing I thought of was one of my really crappy B movies that involves bringing velociraptors back, and then they blow up a mountain.
Oh, all right.
So there's very real possibility I'm going to be talking about one of the silly B movies that I watch on Amazon Prime.
Okay. Well, I
Spoilers.
will come up with something, and it might be Sound of Music. Great.
All right. Well, thanks for listening. And if you enjoyed us and we made you laugh or shout loudly as we didn't remember who was who in the movie,
Sorry.
Let us
we don't
know.
promise to be accurate. We just
It's true.
promise to say
just
some
promise.
silly stuff.
bring some stuff, make us laugh, hopefully make you laugh. If we made you laugh, let someone else know about us, and we can grow as a podcast. And I think that's it. So thanks for
I don't
listening.
know if our podcast has grown at all.
I think we have like a couple. I
If
keep
you're
telling
a
people
new
about it.
listener,
Say hi.
say something to us. And
Say
share
hello.
it with your friends.
Yeah.
On my other podcast, we always have a call to action of go find someone on the street and share it with them.
You don't have to talk to like random strangers, but if you're like walking through a grocery store and you happen to have your headphones in and someone's like, hey, what do you listen to? Be like, even if it's not true, just be like, Nerd of the Week podcast, you should check it out, and just keep doing that.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go.
On the ground grassroots marketing for
Yeah.
Nerd of the Week. Except I hate talking to people in the grocery store.
That's why we tell other people to talk to the people in the grocery
There
store.
you Okay, yes, we're having other people do our dirty business so that I don't have to panic.
Exactly.
Bringing it all full circle.
All right. Again, thanks for listening. We love you. And as always, I've been Stephanie.
And I've been Allison.
And don't let Big Wall get in your way. Never. Never ever. Bye.
Bye.